I'm Rob Auahand. Today we're talking about the tools of critical thinking. Now, if you're watching this because you're in one of my classes, hi, I'm glad you're here. If you found this some other way, welcome, and I hope that this video is exactly what you're looking for. In previous videos, we talked about how critical thinking is not just one thing, but it's actually a set of tools, and each one has a different use, and it's useful in some situations, not in others. We talked about what quality thinking looks like. We talked about theoretical frames, ways of explaining the world. Logic, we talked about fact-checking and the importance of verifying whether information is accurate. We talked about agenda setting and framing, which is ways that the media can present an issue to us that influences how we think about the issue. The next tool of critical thinking we're going to talk about is noticing rhetorical techniques. Rhetoric is the art of talking to an audience. It's actually a very old art. Aristotle first wrote about rhetoric. There's a lot to learn about it if you want to, if you're interested in this. But very basically, rhetoric is the art of successful communication or effective communication. If I want you to donate at the end of my talk, are you ready to donate? If I'm trying to make you laugh at the end of my talk, have you laughed? If I'm trying to persuade you to vote for me at the end of my talk, are you ready to vote for me? And that is rhetoric. Now, there are a lot of rhetorical tools. And remember that rhetoric is based on an audience. Our goal in rhetoric is to influence an audience. And remember that not every audience is an academic audience. So when we're looking at rhetoric, we're going to see some techniques that wouldn't be accepted in a group of scholars, but we see them anyway because they work for other audiences. Things like storytelling, humor. If you can make your audience laugh, they'll be more open to your message. Using facts and data, even when you're not talking to scholars, that can be a very powerful technique. Using emotional appeals, trying to make someone feel shame or guilt or pity. Logic, of course, has its place in any place where we're talking about delivering messages to an audience. Using quotations, using things like slideshows in different media, like videos and stuff. Music. Repetition is an effective rhetorical technique because it helps people remember what you said. And if you listen to really good public speakers, often they repeat a phrase over and over. These are just a few rhetorical techniques. There are many, and all of them can be used to influence an audience. Now, as you see, some of these methods are based in very academic work. Facts and data and logic, that's quite academic. And in a presentation to an academic audience, you'll see these. But a lot of the time in areas like politics or media, you will find, for example, a very good storyteller might have a lot of political success, even though they don't understand science at all. Somebody who's very humorous or charming or funny might become very influential in the media, even though they don't know much about important issues. Okay, rhetoric is not just, is this good academic work, but is this effective communication? Once you start noticing who's using emotional appeals, who's trying to manipulate their audience, rather than talking to their audience and trying to get their audience to think. Once you start noticing those kinds of rhetorical tricks, they stop working on you. And that makes it much harder for someone to manipulate your thinking. So learning a little bit about what rhetoric is and what are some of the tools people use in rhetoric will help you to be immune to manipulation by people who are maybe not good scholars, but really, really good communicators. And there are a lot of people like that, who they're just so charming you don't notice that they've thrown science out the window. They're such interesting talkers that you don't notice that they never use facts. They just tell stories, and they make you cry, and at the end of it, you're ready to vote for them or send them some money. Good rhetoric is really effective. And remember that humans are not pure creatures of logic. These things work. Be ready to notice them when somebody's trying to use them on you. The next method is to look at different viewpoints. Every issue affects more than one group of people. So looking at different viewpoints is kind of asking the question, how would different groups of people view this issue? By identifying the stakeholders. Stakeholders are the people who either benefit or are harmed by something that happens, an event or a policy. Who's making money? Who's losing money? Who has the power is an important part of identifying stakeholders. Who has the power to get their message out and whose view is being ignored? Who doesn't have the ability to spread their message? Okay. Generally, the stakeholders who have the power want their view, their position, to be shared, to get on TV, to be reported in the media. But they're going to frame the issue in a way that benefits them. So it's important, especially when we find there's a group of stakeholders who doesn't have power, who doesn't have a voice, or who has trouble getting their voice heard. It's important to seek out those people, to seek out their views, and to make sure that we look at them and think about them as well. Or else we're going to just automatically accept the framing of those who have power. That's how injustice occurs, when the people who have power also get to tell the story. So go find the stakeholders who don't have a loud voice and make sure that we are listening to them as well. This is a really common critical thinking mistake. And in fact, I've found that when I see a commenter who spends a lot of time talking about facts and logic, maybe they're good at facts and logic, but looking at different viewpoints is often the weak spot. The kind of people who are too busy looking at facts often are so busy talking about their facts and how logical they are that they have stopped listening to other people and other voices. And that's a huge mistake. That's also the type of mistake that causes injustice to continue rather than helping to fight against it. So look at different viewpoints. Try to find especially the viewpoints of the people who don't have the power and don't have the voice. Thank you for watching this video. We have talked a little bit about rhetorical techniques, and we've talked about the importance of looking at different viewpoints. We're almost through all of them, and the next video we're going to talk about the CRAP test and checking values, and then we're going to finish off with self-reflection. Thank you again for watching.